So this video is going to be going over how to apply a texture to a polygonal object. Here is my alien-like character named Delgo. Currently he has no additional surfaces applied to him. He's in smooth shade mode, which is the number 5 key. Number 4 key is your wireframe mode. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over to my Hypershader Perspective panel on the left-hand side. And what you're going to notice is all of these different surfaces that are located in this middle column here and what I currently have available in my library. So Lambert 1 by default is the default gray color that is applied to any object that is added to the Maya interface. Lambert 2 is my secondary surface. It has a transparency. I created this when I was modeling up my character so that way I could see the template early on without having to go into X-ray mode. Particle and shader are two different surfaces that are left alone. You cannot delete them, don't try to delete them, but yet don't also use it as a surface used to apply to your body. These are great. Particles and shaders are used for different polygonal objects and NURBS objects in later chapters. So the first thing I'm going to do is create myself a new Lambert. And this one happens to be called Lambert 3. I'm going to rename this Lambert. You can do so in the channel box. You can also open up the attribute editor. The attribute editor is the shortcut Control A. You can also toggle with the attribute editor using this icon up here at the top. So this is what the attribute editor looks like. And then your toggle is over here for the channel box versus the attribute editor. So again, I'm going to rename my Lambert 3 to something called Body M, referring to body material, and press the Enter key. In the simplistic state of changing the color of an object, the first thing I'll do is click on, if you notice this color right here, where it's gray, I'm going to click on this and choose myself a new color of sorts. So if we wanted our character to be kind of a bluish color, the color that actually appears underneath the word color history is the one that actually will be applied to the character. Simply moving your mouse away from this color mixer box, it then disappears. So Body M as a surface, it was created as a Lambert, which you can see from the other Lamberts is a very dull surface. It's very much like the rubber on a tire. Okay, now to add this surface to our character along with the color, you select the object and you can come over to your library of your Hypershader and right click and hold and choose Assign Material to Selection. That's one way of doing it. I didn't do it yet. The other way of doing it is to select your object, right click and hold on top of the object and go down to Assign Existing Material and you'll see Body M is located down there. So either way will get you to the point where you can apply that color to your object. Two other surfaces that are often used are the blends as well as the fongs. You'll notice the blend has a sheen or a shine to it. This is very similar to a whiteboard in a classroom where there is some reflection of the lighting. It's not super shiny, but it does have some reflection abilities. Or refraction abilities. The fong, a little further down, is a very, very shiny material or surface, and this would be something you would apply to that shiny red Corvette. So a very shiny finish is on the fong. So between the blend, the Lambert, and the fong, you've got three great surfaces. Always apply a color to a surface, or always apply a texture to a surface. The surface is then applied to your object. So for example, if we wanted to apply a checkered pattern or a granite pattern to Delgo here, we could do so by applying these 2D and 3D textures to a surface. Again, our surface is Body M. So select Body M over in your work area or in the library section of your Hypershader. And this time, to the right of the word color, there is a checker box. We're going to click on that checker box and a new window will populate called the Create Render node. And for sake of ease, I'm going to choose the checker, which has no correlation with the icon to the right of the word color, but we do in fact want to apply a checker pattern to Delgo. Alright, when this happens, your character turns this odd shade of gray once again. And the reason why is because by default, When you press the number 5 key on your keyboard, essentially you're turning on the Smooth Shade All. Well, Smooth Shade All is simply referring to colors, not to textures. If you go down to the Hardware Texturing text box and put a check mark next to it, you'll see that the checker pattern is there. The hotkey is also the number 6 key on your keyboard. So 5 is just color and 6 is for textures to appear, or hardware textures. So looking at my character, the checker pattern is very unique and it's not consistent throughout. And this is Maya's way of interpreting what the checker pattern is going to do to your character's UVs within the actual character itself. So what a UV is, every single vertice that we have on our character is converted into a UV. Okay, now before we go applying any kind of modification of the UV patterns, one of the biggest steps prior to this is making sure that your character is molded and sculpted as you expected. So for example, in the front and side orthographic views, what I typically always recommend is that you look at these two particular views and make sure that it appears that your torso is rounded throughout your character. It's not simply a block-like structure. In some of the areas in which you can tell this with, I'll just go into face mode, you can see that there's slight difference between the edges on the areas that I'm clicking. This lets you know that your character's been rounded out. And likewise, if I go into side view, our character again has a good round effect. You can see that these faces right here are contouring to our character. And again, you've got some sort of dipping notion that's taking place along in here to basically show your spine in the backside of the character's body and the curvature that's happening on his arms, etc. So now that we know that our character is completely rounded out as we expect him to do, the next thing we're going to do is open up what's called the UV Texture Editor window. The UV Texture Editor window can be found at the very end of the polygons shelf, very end down here. It also can be found if you go to the Edit UVs menu at the very bottom is the UV Texture Editor window. So either way will get you to this window, which has a big texture of a checker pattern. So it's difficult to see our character inside of here, and it's not going to look as you would expected. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Image and choose Dim Image. The dimming of the image basically allows you to see all the white wireframes of your character in contrast to the black and white checker. This right here, this very interesting L shape, is Maya's interpretation of the UVs for your character. What this means is that while our character is a three-dimensional object, a UV is essentially a two-dimensional placement of texture. So what's going to happen is, in the case of, let's find out what some of these UVs are. So this UV is referring to the character's head. You can kind of see it's highlighted green right here. Is on the top of the head. So this part down here is referring to our character's head. And I only swiped one UV, but yet two UVs are selected, letting me know that whatever I draw or design on the right side of our character's head, the same thing's going to happen on the left side as well. So whatever designs I put on the front of the character, it also will appear on the back side of the character, unless we reproject our character out, which is the next stage that we're going to do. So the first thing I'll do is go back into object mode on our character. You can see the whole thing has been selected. And in object mode, I'm going to go to the Create UVs menu at the top. And this is all part of the Polygons drop-down list. So go to Create UVs and click on the Options box next to Planar Mapping. Clicking on this Options box basically asks us which direction we would like to project our initial texturing from. So the easiest thing to do is project from what's going to cover most of the body at one time. And for us, it's going to be the Z direction. One of the key ways of testing this out is in the lower left corner of your screen. While looking at, in this case, the front view, you can see that we are looking directly at the Z direction. The X direction would be from the character's side, and the Y direction is if we were looking at the character's head. And so to cover most of the spaces possible, we want to do it from the front, which happens to be from the Z direction. So I'm going to click Z and then press the project button. And what you're going to see is in the UV texture editor window, our character looks substantially better. The whole thing is covered in a checkered pattern. But once again, when you project like this, what you're saying is that what you do on the front will also do it on the back. And while that works for, let's say, your blue jeans, or for the sleeves, the color of your sleeves and your arms, what it doesn't work for is if the character has a belt buckle. Because if we project, or if we draw a belt buckle on the front side of our character, that belt buckle is also going to appear on the back side of our character, which would be a little strange. Likewise, for the character's face, if I were to give my character some red lips, what's going to happen, the way I've currently projected it from the Z direction, is it's also going to give it a pair of lips on the back side of the head. So this process is somewhat time consuming, but it's part of the setup process where we go back and reproject the things that we want to have a projection from a different angle other than from the Z direction. So I'm going to take a few minutes to go through and reselect, let's say, his arms. So I'm going to go into front view here, turn off my grid so I can ensure that I'm selecting the same amount on both sides with a click, drag, and select. So I've stopped just before the armpit area. You can see I basically project these in uniform. I'm going to go up to the Create UVs, go to Planar Mapping, go to the Options box, and this time we're going to project these from the Y-axis. Okay, so we'll click the Project button. What's going to happen is they're going to be very stretched out, but what I'm going to do, you'll see in this UV Texture Editor window, is I'm purposely going to move these arms off of the main grid area. And the reason for this is, let's say I get distracted or I step away. When I reselect my character, my arms, if I didn't move them off to the side, they'd be sitting on top of our initial projection, which is okay, but it's difficult to select the whole arm then. For example, I want this arm on this side to be on top of this arm, so that way when I texture one side, it automatically textures the other side. So the easiest way of doing this is once you are in your UV Texture Editor window, we're going to right-click and hold and go into UV mode. I'm going to click and drag around this whole arm. So that was pretty easy to do. So then I'm going to flip it to the other side. Up at the top here, you'll see that there are two different choices of how to flip around your UVs. So I'm going to choose flip UVs in the U direction, and you'll see that they basically have mirrored each other on both sides. So with the Move tool, the W key, I'm going to pick up the one arm and move it on top of the other arm, as close as I possibly can. The F key was that shortcut key to jump to see as close as we possibly could, and now I have both arms on top of one another. I'm going to reselect both of these. So the reselection is because the one arm behind there was not selected prior to. Okay, and likewise, I'm going to go into UV mode on our character guy and move him off to the side as well. Okay, no checker pattern is appearing on the character because I basically have moved both body parts that have been projected off of the upper right quadrant. The upper right quadrant is the only area that is positive X and positive Y, which is where all objects need to exist in order for the texture to appear. So I'm going to go back into our side view now for our character. I'm going to reproject his head. Okay. The reason why I'm going to project this from the X direction is because when I color one part of his lip, it's going to color the other part as well. When I detail one ear, it will detail the other ear as well because our character was created in symmetry. All projections should take place in face mode. So we'll click and drag and go around and make sure that we've selected it in face mode. And if I've gone too far and I don't want to select the neck as part of the head, hold down your Control key and swipe through, and that will unselect your neck area and just keep the head area selected. You'll notice over here in the UV Texture Editor window, this is the head that's hanging out over here, and once again I'm going to need to reproject this head. If I look at this really closely, The head is actually looking straight at us because that is the Z direction that was originally used when we projected the body all together. So again, I'm going to go back to the main Maya screen. Go to Create UVs, click on the Options box next to Planar Mapping, and again this time we're going to project it from the side, which is the X-axis, and here's our monstrosity of a head. Okay, the Scale tool is at upper right side there, and I'm going to scale him down just a wee bit, and then move him off to the side as well. So once again, the texture is no longer appearing on the character. We could go about this process again and again for the legs and for the feet, etc. For the interim, or for the brief time here, what I am going to do is reselect the faces on the chest plate area, so this character has the opportunity to wear a necktie, a bow tie, an opened jacket or a vest, a belt buckle, and whatever it is that I design in the front, it will not design it on the back as well, because I'm going to reproject it. So in doing so, I'm going to move this off to the side, get nice and close and personal with the front of our character, and now you got to be in face mode to do this. And so basically I'm just going to click, shift, click. Make sure that you do not click and drag because you'll select the back side of the character as well. If you're going to do a belt buckle, I recommend that you select all the way through, and I am going to select these side ones because I'm not certain how wide the opening of my vest or sweater is going to be. Okay, so we'll select all these. So all these faces now been selected. Again, in the UV texture editor window, you'll see the chest plate is kind of hanging out on the side here, basically waiting for us to reproject it. Before I do that, I am going to flip over to my perspective view and make sure that no faces were selected on the back if I accidentally clicked and dragged. So if I did, in which case I did, it's a shift, click, shift to unselect those back faces. And I'm good to go. I noticed that I had some extra ones selected over here, which is why I did that extra check. Okay, with that, we're going to reproject, and we are going to reproject these from the Z, which is the front direction, which is what we originally did anyway, but this time we can now texture the chest differently than the way we would texture the rest of the body. So we'll put this like this, and I'm going to move it off to the side. So I'm going to leave them the way it is at this point. Let's go into object mode, and you can kind of see how all of my different pieces have been broken apart, and now my responsibility is to piece them back together again. So I'm going to right click and go into UV mode and select as much as I can of the character and move them back in. Select the arms, move them back in. If by chance you don't select the whole thing, for example, and you go like this, stop what you're doing, press the Z key, unselect, and select the whole thing. If by chance you made a mistake and you dropped one on top of the other, it is virtually impossible to select one and not select part of the other, of course. So your solution for that is to select any one UV. So again, if you're not seeing these little green dots, make sure you're in UV mode. Select any one UV, go up to the select menu and choose select shell. This basically will select this whole shell and not affect the secondary projection of the head, etc. So I'm going to plug this in here and then select the whole head and plug it in there. Okay, so now in doing so, all parts of my body are in the upper right quadrant, which is what I wanted. They're all checkered, and they're all respectively approximately the same size of a checker pattern, which is ideal for a smooth, non-stretched layout of our character when we go to texture it. At this point, I'm going to save my file and continue with this next video in just a moment here. So this is how you go about assigning a surface, in this case it was a Lambert, to your character, assigning a color at first, and then we went back and reassigned a 2D texture such as the checker. You don't have to start with a color and then do a texture. You can just jump right to the texture or leave it as just a color. But once again, the checker pattern is ideal whenever you go through the texturing process, since it's a good visual to see how the pattern is laid out. We want to be as consistent in size and placement as possible. And then the UV texture editor window is this one that we basically want to see all body parts in the upper right quadrant, again appropriately sized and scaled amongst each other. Thanks for watching.